Hello there. This is Mara McLaughlin. I'm Executive Director of Music Oregon and Music Portland, and I want to do a fast run through of Oregon's first commercial music census, specifically for dedicated venues. That includes dedicated clubs, performing arts centers, places where presentation of live music is their primary business. So the whole process takes 5 to 8 minutes. It is entirely anonymous, and I cannot underscore this enough. We do not know in this process, nor do we ask who you are, what your business is. We are promoting this specifically to known music businesses, and so we know that the answers that we get will be applicable when brought together into an aggregate report that tells the collective story of the economic impact of the music sector in Oregon. We were approved by the state legislature in February to do this study, an economic impact study of commercial music and live performance. But the reality is there is not definitive and defensible data about the music sector because it's very non-standard and because the industry codes have not kept up with the changes in music so that they can't reflect the whole of the music economic impact in the state. So they've tasked Music Oregon and Music Portland with completing a census that is going to collect the data that will be used in aggregate in the reports to inform policymakers, the economic impact study, and to start to change the way that commercial music and live performance is prioritized in the state. Since COVID and beyond, we need to have credit for the value that we provide to the state. I'm going to walk through this survey very quickly. It'll take a little bit longer than it'll take you because I'll be talking. First, we ask if you're a musical artist. If you are, and you also run a music venue, then say yes there, and it'll ask you questions about that separately. But let's presume that you are not, but that yes, you are, you do run a commercial venture that is involved in presenting music as a music venue. And you do know about the finances, staffing, and other decisions. And the title, you can say, and you pick your type of business. We're already 40% of the way through the process. Do you own or manage more than one business? Since a number of people own multiple music venues, and some of them you keep track of all of your finances in a single record keeping system, then you can certainly say, yes, I own more than one business, and I'm going to combine those businesses into a single response. And I'll talk about that as I go. But if you have the other option is if you keep your books separately for different venues that you control, you may want to just do each venue as a separate census response, and you can select that as an option. But let's say, no, we only have one music business to keep it simple. You put in your actual zip code. I'm putting in 0000 so I can remove it from the data after the fact. Your year established, and you are going to select live music venue, dedicated or ticketed. That can be a club, a concert hall, a performing arts center. And down below, it asks for a little bit of additional detail, whether you're a concert arena, dedicated ticketed music venue, theater event space, or other. Let's say that you're a dedicated music venue. Do you have staff? Almost all of you do. And that opens up just a few questions. So how many full-time staff did you have in 2019, the last full year before COVID? And how many do you anticipate you will have employed W-2 full-time employees in 2022? Then it asks the same thing about W-2 seasonal or part-time workers, and then also about 1099 contracted workers, excluding performers. So this is going to be sound and lighting people and things like that. So I'm just going to make up numbers in here because this is not a real response. 5 and 8. Just making up numbers. You should not. When you're talking about total labor expenditures, you have a gut number of what this is, and that gut number is sufficient. If you don't, you may want to take a peek at a book, but to be able to say, you know, I did 400,000 last year and it was about 25% less this year. So, and I've spent 50,000 in 2019 and I'm at about 31,000 paid for subcontractors now. As you can see, we are 63% of the way through this process. So your gross annual revenue, this is the one that stops people. Don't know how to say it enough. We never collect who you are. This is truly by law an anonymous survey. We need to collect the data anonymously to be able to create the story that we need. So for this, you know, you might say, great, I'm going to enter in those numbers, which again can be rounded up. They can be all of those things. Traded sector income matters a lot in a state without a sales tax. Oregon policymakers look very favorably at businesses that attract dollars from outside the state. So a rough gut check of what you think is your business quotient from outside the state. And for venues, we understand that a majority of your demand is going to be coming from people within your vicinity. But if you do have a reason why, if you're a festival, which is another group that might come through this path, they might have a different story. Now, we're looking at a few specific questions about hosting live music. Are you operated as a nonprofit or municipally owned? If you say yes, it's going to ask you what percentage of your what percentage of your gross revenue comes from grants or government assistance, excluding COVID relief. So let's leave that apart for now. If you say no, you're not owned by a nonprofit or municipally owned, it'll take you right to, do you own your building? How many shows do you host on average now? So you might say 20 shows a month, or you might say 2 shows a week, or 15 shows a year. That's clear enough. How does this compare to the number of live music shows you hosted in 2019? For most of you, I know it's going to be less performances now. What percentage of your annual shows would you estimate are booked by promoters from outside of Oregon? So you might say 20% or 10% or 5% or 0. Let's say 0 just to show you that works. Your audience capacity. If you're answering for more than one venue, put in your combined capacity. So if you have 2 350 cap rooms, fill that in with 700. And your average ticket price, you're going to know as a gut number. Roughly estimate your annual capacity fill rate. If you know that in 2019, on average, kind of blended across the year, you were at 78%, 75%, and that now you are at about 60% fill rate. I know that redemptions are a big challenge, and that's what we're kind of trying to capture for people there. It's not even about how many tickets you sell. It's about what your fill rate is. Estimated annual alcohol sales. Again, this is where we're talking about state revenue and state taxes. And specifically, since we're interested in exploring liquor tax abatements, this is a key number for us. Again, 100% anonymous. No reason not to be answering these things. So if you have 120,000 in that year, and maybe you're down to 100,000. How many booked acts per month on average feature performers and crew that come from out of state? This is again about traded sector impact. This is really important because the film industry gets millions of dollars in tax credit incentives and funding because they bring production crews who use hotel rooms and buy food in local restaurants. When we look at the number of traveling musicians and crew that music venues are bringing to our state, I believe it will dwarf that number. And that's the kind of data that we can use to really advocate for sustaining funding to music venues, because they are bringing this kind of traded sector economic activity. So if you know that you book 10 acts a month that come from out of state, and the average act is going to have, including performers and traveling crew, 4. Those are numbers that we can then use to tell an extrapolated story. And the last thing, you're at 88%. Describe yourself. I'm a 39-year-old male, and I'm of Middle Eastern or North African, and my home zip code, please put in your real home zip code for wherever you are in the state. And then any other comments you're welcome to put in, you don't have to. And then the final step that I'm surprised how many people get to the very end and then don't, please hit the submit button. When you hit submit, it pops up a little thank you, so you know it was successfully submitted. And it also encourages you to share the fact that you've done a census out into the world. We'd love to talk with you, and please be in touch if you would like to be a crusader, which you will be able to find at the bottom of the OregonMusicCensus.org page. There's a Crusader kit that you can use to help promote the census and to increase participation amongst the artists, the Oregon artists that you have connections with, the Oregon contractors, and any other music business in the state that you have reasons to deal with. It is absolutely vital that we have comprehensive and enormous response to this, because if few of you answer, that's telling the state how many of you there are. If few artists answer, it is telling the state that the music community doesn't really care and isn't galvanized enough to merit the kinds of benefits that we've seen in other states and that we could accrue here, that will make musicians more sustained. It will support venues and value them as the cultural palaces, secular churches, and grange halls of our modern day. It's really important that we get this information and that we're able to tell our collective story. So spread the word, contact us with any and all questions about the census, who's participating. It is state sponsored. It is being run by Business Oregon, who's contracted Music Portland and Music Oregon to facilitate the census. And then the PSU NERC group, Northwest Economic Research Council, is doing the final economic study using the census data. So please take less than 10 minutes, run through this, and make sure that you encourage everyone else to do the same. Thanks very much.